So today we're going to be taking a look at a very specific directive from the Russian president, Vladimir Putin.
All right.
And it has to do with military actions in Ukraine. More specifically, it limits the targets of those actions.
Interesting.
So the core of this directive is it's entirely focused on energy infrastructure within Ukraine.
Really focusing in on that.
Yeah.
And this is an active directive.
It is.
This isn't something we're looking at in the past. This is still in effect.
According to Dmitry Peskov.
That's right. Putin's press secretary.
Right.
So this limitation of, the types of targets, I think is worth looking into.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
And this focus on energy facilities appears to be tied to a recent diplomatic exchange.
Oh, okay.
So there was a phone call back on March 18th between President Putin and then U.S. President Donald Trump.
Right.
And they reached an agreement for a 30-day pause, specifically on attacks targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure.
So this directive is limited in time?
Yes, it seems to be part of like a negotiated situation.
Okay, interesting.
So following that high-level communication, Putin issued the corresponding instruction to the military.
Got it.
And then we also have the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky initially indicated he would wait for details of this agreement from Washington before responding, but subsequently voiced his support for this 30-day moratorium on striking energy infrastructure.
Okay, so both sides seem to be in agreement.
Yes. It appears so.
At least for now.
Yeah, for this period of 30 days.
Interesting.
So you have this window where these energy targets are supposedly off limits.
Right.
But alongside this diplomatic development, a significant incident involving a crucial piece of infrastructure has occurred.
Oh, okay.
The Sudja GIS measuring station, or GIS.
Right.
And this really kind of brings up this question of, how do these high-level agreements play out against events on the ground?
Yeah, exactly. How does this translate into the reality of what's happening?
Right.
On the ground.
So Russian investigative authorities have actually opened a terrorism case concerning damage to this Sudja GIS.
Wow. A terrorism case?
Yeah.
That's pretty serious.
And the initial details emerging from this investigation point toward a specific actor.
Okay.
And they're suggesting that Ukrainian military forces were responsible for the damage to this facility.
Interesting.
Which is located in the Kursk region.
Okay.
Now, this is in territory that Russian defense officials had reported as being under their control, with the town of Sudja reportedly being liberated on March 13th.
So if we're looking at a timeline here, this incident happened very soon after that liberation.
Very rapidly unfolding sequence of events.
Yeah, just days after.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And to make things even more complicated, around the same time, there were reports of an attack on an oil depot in the Krasnodar territory.
Okay, so another attack, but this one on Russian soil.
Yes.
All right.
Ukrainian military forces reportedly used drones in this attack on the night of March 19th, causing a fire.
Okay.
But Russian authorities didn't view this in isolation. They labeled it a provocation with a specific aim to disrupt what they called Trump's peace efforts.
So they're trying to tie this back to this agreement that was made earlier.
Interesting.
And at that point, the Kremlin made it clear that Putin had not given any order to resume strikes on energy infrastructure.
So even with this attack on what they consider to be Russian soil, they are sticking to the agreement that was made.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even with this attack, the stated directive regarding Ukrainian energy targets held.
That's notable.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the situation with the Sudja GIS has continued to develop.
All right.
The Russian Ministry of Defense has since issued a statement directly accusing Ukrainian forces of deliberately damaging the facility.
Okay, so they're not missing words here. They're being very direct in their accusations. Yeah, and their explanation goes further than just an attack.
Okay.
They're claiming that the Sudja GIS was actually under the control of Ukrainian armed forces until very recently.
Wow, that's a big claim.
Yeah.
If true, that's a pretty significant detail.
Right, and they further allege that it wasn't just under their control, but that it was actively being used as a logistical support point for Ukrainian military operations.
Huh, so they're saying it wasn't just that it was under their control, but they were using it.
Yeah. Okay, so from their perspective, the damage to this important Russian energy object isn't just collateral damage or a random act of aggression. They're characterizing it as a premeditated provocation.
Okay, so they're alleging that this was a deliberate act.
Yes.
With a specific purpose.
Right. And what was the goal of this alleged provocation, according to them?
Right.
The Russian Ministry of Defense states that it was specifically designed to discredit the peace initiatives that the U.S. president was putting forward at that time.
Really? So they're saying this was intended to undermine those peace talks?
Yeah.
Wow.
So a very specific political motive is being attributed to this action.
Yeah, they're really trying to frame this in a particular way. Interesting.
And the official legal designation of this incident by Russian investigators really underscores how seriously they're taking it.
Yeah.
The investigation into the Sudja GIS has been classified as a terrorist act.
So not just a military action or even an act of sabotage, but terrorism.
Their belief is that Ukrainian military personnel intentionally damaged this gas distribution station, causing significant damage.
Right. So they're taking a very strong stance on this.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that the Sudja GIS was a key point for the transit of gas to Europe via Ukraine up until very recently, January 1, 2025 to be exact.
Right. And the contract for those gas deliveries was not extended by Kyiv.
Right. So that was a significant development in terms of the energy relationship between those two countries.
Absolutely. And so the damage to the station has implications that extend beyond just the physical damage.
Right.
It touches on broader energy security concerns and geopolitical relationships.
Yeah, there's a lot more at play here than just this one facility.
Right. And so these differing accounts of what happened at the Sudja GIS and why really highlight the complexities of understanding events in an active conflict zone.
Definitely, we have these high-level agreements, trying to establish some sort of peace.
Right.
But then you have these incidents on the ground.
Yeah.
And it becomes very difficult to figure out what actually happened and who's responsible.
Exactly.
Especially when you have these conflicting narratives coming from different sides.
Right.
It makes you question, who to believe and what the true motives were.
Right. So we've got this situation where we've got the presidential order focusing on energy infrastructure.
Right.
We've got the 30-day agreement intended to pause attacks on those targets. We've got the drone attack on the Russian oil depot. And then this very significant incident at the Sudja gas measuring station with all the accusations and the terrorism investigation.
Yeah, it really paints this picture of just how complicated this situation is.
Yes.
With so many different factors at play.
Absolutely.
And it's a reminder that even when you have these diplomatic efforts, things can change very quickly.
Yes.
Based on what's happening on the ground.
Absolutely. So it's a multi-layered situation.
Definitely.
With potential ramifications for energy security and diplomatic efforts alike. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. We are here to make things clear. New episodes every day.